Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello. It's always something. Never mind. I'm full of greased up lotion here, and I'm having trouble holding any. Wait a minute. Okay. I've got it all over everything. Hi. How you doing? It be the 26th. It be 2 days before Thanksgiving. Thanks for that. I look forward to Thanksgiving. And it's a Tuesday, and so Susan is with us from St. Louis. Hi, Suze. Hello, Suze.
Really?
Oh, no.
I'll get around.
Okay.
Ship is supporting.
What? It's going to be one of those days, huh? Okay. Well, it gives me a chance maybe to get some of this. Why is it that some lotion, hand lotion, is just, it feels like you're literally just putting, like, lard on your hand. That's what this feels like. I'm a slippery one at the moment. Is Suze there now? Hello, Susan.
Wait.
Whoops.
For it.
Wait for it. Hello?
Hello.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't know what happened there.
When did you realize you were not with us?
Oh, I knew immediately when I hear a very audible click.
Oh,
it's rather rude.
Unintentional. Excuse me. Unintentional.
You okay there?
Yeah. Little asthma flare up. That's all. Yeah. So, we're how's your weather? Did you get away from this storm?
We're okay. We're on the
it dipped below
a little
you.
to the north and the west of this.
Right.
I was worried about you, actually.
Well, it's happening to us starting right now, so it's snowing, and we'll see. It's supposed to snow all day, all night, all the next day. I don't know. But the good news is it'll be done.
Okay, because you aren't okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think we don't have any issues.
And since I'll be heading east, and the storm is heading. I'll be heading west, and the storm's heading east. At some point I'd drive right out of it.
Right.
Right. So, no problem. And
okay.
Yeah, we shall be there.
I think my son is dragging the turkey fryer.
Oh gosh, really? He always does. I don't know what we do without it.
Well, there was a little piece on the Groupon website that highlights my daughter and my son cooking the Thanksgiving turkey, followed by sweet potato fries as long as the oil was hot, followed by beignets.
There was a piece on what?
On Groupon.
Well, why don't you forward that to me?
Okay.
Was it pictures of them doing all that?
Uh-huh.
Wow, cool. Well, why don't you put that up so we can share that with people? Or not?
Okay.
So, and I've been on the receiving end of this. So he fries the turkey, and then with the remaining oil, he fries potatoes. Then with the remaining oil, he makes these beignets, which describe those. Those are ridiculous.
Which they do admit are slightly savory.
Well, describe what a beignet is. I hadn't encountered one.
A beignet is a piece of dough.
Dough.
I mean, they're French, but they are most famously from the French Quarter in New Orleans. And where anybody that goes into the place comes out just covered in powdered sugar. They're little pieces of dough that you throw in hot fat, and they sort of expand and blow up, puff up, and then you just drown them in powdered sugar, and they're absolutely delicious.
Oh, this is so funny. As you were saying, dough and hot fat. I clicked to see if I had any incoming mail, and there's something immediately from the health department. It's health department.
Am I being arrested?
No, actually, as it turns out, on further look, it was their office is relocating. But I thought that was funny because it sure didn't sound like a politically correct kind. But I have eaten them; they're unbelievable. Okay. So, the poundage, oh, the poundage. So, let's see here, Suze. We got stuff we can talk about, I know. Anything floating your boat at the moment?
No, not a thing.
Okay.
I'm
All right. Okay. Let's start with this story, which I just love. I kept hearing about it, but I didn't know much about it. Do you hear about it's about an airline, so right away we know it's an unhappy story, right?
Right.
And it's about those of us in Pittsburgh believe the most horrible airlines, that'd be U.S. Air, because we love them and they stuck a knife in our backs. And there was a U.S. Airways flight, and it, as usual, was stuck on a tarmac. I'm not quite sure where this was. And they're sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting. One of the guys on the flight had a seeing eye dog. And the dog was getting very... the flight attendant kept insisting that the dog be almost under the seat in front of him. Well, a seeing eye dog, and this was a pretty large dog, that is so ridiculously confining for that animal. And even a well-trained service dog like that started to, like, oh, please let me, I can't stand this anymore. And the guy let him, the plane's not in the air. The plane's not going anywhere. The guy lets his poor dog come out. The flight attendant has a fit. The flight attendant insists that they will turn around and go back to the gate if the dog is not under the seat in front of him. And
he's not a piece of luggage.
And the blind man started, saying, hey, what is the problem? And they got kicked off the plane. Did you hear? She told him, "You're out of here. Get your dog. You're out."
Oh, I smell another apology coming.
No, U.S. Air has refused to apologize, and here's the amazing thing: when they were escorted out, the other passengers on the plane started to protest and insisted that they let the dog and guy back on. They really started having fits, apparently.
Good.
And, yeah, good. But this inspiring show of unity...
Got them all kicked off?
That is correct. Believe it or not, the pilot said, all right, guys, then you all just get off. We're canceling the flight.
Well, that's
Bad business, I'll tell you that.
that's a great piece of PR for our newly merged airline.
Oh, yes. Well, they're going to lose the name U.S. Airways, so at least, maybe they can hide under that cover. It's amazing.
It's disgusting. I mean, and doesn't anybody know that there really are special rules of accommodation?
Now, I had read recently that some of these rules of accommodation are really being violated. The intent is violated. I read a piece about some psychologist in California who, if you send her enough money and a sad story, will immediately write you what is essentially a prescription for needing a service animal when you fly so that you can
I know people that do that.
Oh, you know people who do it. Okay, so they can fly with, Muffy and Puffy, and they can say that, I simply can't get on a flight without Muffy and Puffy because I just start to shake and and this, I have it. And so, people can end up sitting next to, I think there was a miniature horse that one person said they had to have with them. And there have been miniature horses and potbelly pigs and who knows what other manner of mammalia. And this is going to... Why do people always take advantage of what something that was put in place to help truly disabled people? And then
because then you get into an argument about, what constitutes truly disabled. And I would suggest that the problem is with the dishonest docs.
Well, that's a big problem. Yeah,
I mean, this problem wouldn't exist if a doctor said, "I'm sorry, but that's not who this rule is for. And if you want to travel with your animal, you'll have to travel like any other person that wants to travel with their animal."
Yeah.
And there are ways to do it. There's an X number of, seats available for people that are just traveling with their animals, or you can pay for a seat or they go in cargo. But, in this case where we have a objectifiably verified blind person with his seeing eye dog, what they did is inexcusable.
Yeah.
Absolutely inexcusable.
So
let's get the name of the flight attendant and pilot, and let's
Yeah, what an awful... It's the flight attendant who really caused the problem.
Yeah, it was.
Must have been some dog-hating flight attendant. There's no way a service dog is not well-behaved, right?
Right. And there's no way that you have the right to subject an animal to rules that, don't work.
Well,
if that dog is too big, dogs aren't luggage.
I don't know. So,
yeah. All right. Well, now you've already put me in a bad mood. Good work.
No, but you got to look at the bright side of this story. The bright side of this story is the passengers.
People stood up and suffered the consequences, and they were right.
They left with the blind man. Maybe they didn't think that would be the end result, but they stood up and said, "Are you out of your mind?" And bango, what a jerk crew that was. Jeez. And I suppose there'll be lawsuits over that one, including, because of the ADA, Disabilities Act. I mean, I don't see how that guy doesn't have a strong case. Jesus. Unbelievable. Okay, so, see, that's the good news, Susan. You kind of look on the good side. Glass is half full. What was that?
So much to be thankful for.
What was that wonderful story that Clarence told us once? He called in to talk about this, what anybody else would consider this bad, horrible day he had. Where you walk out the door and, flat tire and cars, this, and I can't even remember, but one bad thing after another was happening. Stopped by a cop. And Clarence told the whole story and then showed how it was actually a story about all kinds of wonderful things happening. Isn't that a sort of wonderful way to look
Yes,
at things?
it's very nice to be able to look at the world that way.
Susan said, thinking, Jesus, I couldn't do that in a million years.
Well, I try.
I try to. I mean, and if it doesn't come naturally, trying is the least we can do. So that I've really been working on that lately. But I'm much more inclined to direct it at other people than to myself. So that when I hear people complaining, I always say, well, put it in perspective. Rather than, say, oh, put it in perspective. Think of
I really do try and do that when I sit around feeling sorry for myself for one reason or another. I remind myself that on a scale of 1 to 10, I got absolutely nothing to complain about.
That's right. In terms of the lives we live, the comfort with which we live, the lack of fear of, being eaten by, a marauding animal or being blown to pieces, going to the marketplace, or just there's so many things. But no one who's complaining wants you to say that to them. They don't.
Well, no. I mean, you have to know. You have to understand when you might be actually heard. You're free to say anything you want anytime, but whether it sinks in is a matter of timing.
Oh, my God. Oh, so PJ sent us this thing about commonly asked questions about service animals, and this is put out by the Department of Justice. And here's a question. How can I tell if an animal is really a service animal and not just a pet?
Well, they usually have service animal regalia on so that you know.
Yes, you should have. Yeah, if you're going to have the true thing, you've got to have those little things you put on the dog. That's true.
And that's as much for the dog's protection as anything. That dog has a job to do. So everybody coming along and patting the dog and doing all of that is extremely distracting to the dog.
Yeah. And here's someone who says, I've been told by my health department that only guide dogs for the blind have to be allowed into the place. And wanting to know if they're violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the answer is, yeah, you are.
Yeah, I think you are, too. I mean, there have been all these cases lately with children with autism, and that dogs are extraordinarily helpful with children with autism, but elementary schools don't want to let the dog in because there's other kids with allergies,
God.
And each time, it's partly a story of how miraculous dogs are.
Indeed.
That they can help so many people in so many different ways that are truly life-changing. But it takes a while for humans to admit that human being's life is better for that dog being there.
What human being's life isn't better for a dog being there?
I can't imagine.
Right. I can't imagine either. Okay. Well,
It's going to make me want a dog.
I know. I've been sort of... Yeah, no, yeah. They're wonderful. They're wonderful.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, I'm lucky in that I have a lot of... I'm the aunt to a lot of dogs.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And
so
it's nice to be the
try
aunt.
and get my dog fixed that way.
Okay, let's take a break, and when we return, I guess we'll start wading into some of the issues in the news. Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, Susan, steel thyself. We shall return.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
just in time for the holidays. Little's Shoes is your UGG headquarters. Little's has the largest selection of UGGs for men, women, and children to stay warm with shearling-lined boots, shoes, and slippers. Don't forget to get your hats, gloves, scarves, and more. Bring the entire family to view one of the largest in-store UGG shops in the U.S. All available at Little's Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store. Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill or littleshoes.com.
Check out my new time machine.
Does it work?
Hit the button.
Hey, it's Napoleon.
Oui. Check out the future.
Hey, you have a nice house. Why don't I?
You didn't save any money, buddy.
If only there was a way I could go back in time and fix that.
Yeah.
Save something for the future. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay. All right. I want to bring up a story that's not like the number one story, and in fact is just sort of flitting around the edges, but I keep hearing people talking about it, and I find this fascinating. The first time I saw a story about it was, I think, over the weekend, and it was in the New York Times, and it was in their Metro section. It was a story about something that happened in Brooklyn, and it was about an Orthodox Jewish man being punched by this group of 3 or 4 African American young men walking by. And it was said that this was apparently connected to the so-called knockout game. Suze, have you heard about the knockout game?
No, there was an elderly, I think, Vietnamese man who was walking with his wife along a major thoroughfare in St. Louis carrying their groceries, and a bunch of kids came along and, one punched to his head and he was dead.
Yes, and that St. Louis case is often held up as, an indicator. But that was, was that like a year or two ago?
That was probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and there was an incident here as well, which some Pittsburghers might recall. And
there was an incident with your very own brother in Iceland.
Really?
Yes.
What happened to him?
He was walking with a colleague. He was there for a conference, and they were walking along a sidewalk, and it was some big festival, and all these gorgeous Icelandic women were walking around, with the horns on their head like Valkyries,
Yeah.
And this gorgeous woman just came striding straight towards them. They were on the sidewalk, and they were going to step aside to let her pass, and she just took 2 fists and slammed them both in their nether regions. Bill and he then
fell
to
to
the sidewalk writhing.
Wait a minute! This tall, blonde woman with the horns on her head,
yep.
Striding by these 2 men, took
yep.
both of them down, and
yep.
and unprovoked attack, and then just kept walking?
Yep.
Why don't I remember that story? Wow!
I don't know, but it's a true one.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you told that story, because it puts this is part of what I want to talk about. What you just told is fascinating. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, which may seem like it isn't necessary to hear, but I want to ask you, you did say that in St. Louis, the guy who was killed in one of these unprovoked attacks, you said he was Asian?
Yes, he was Vietnamese, I believe.
Okay. And the attackers were, I'm sorry, but will you racially identify them?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Okay. Because the thing about the knockout game, which is getting attention all over the place. Look, here's a headline from USA Today just this yesterday.
Right. No, I saw that. I saw that article.
Police warn of knockout game. Well, all the incidents that get noted are of young black men doing this to white people. And so this is considered to be like this, the marauding black men are going to...
Yeah, I don't know what the racial... It was a group of kids. I do not remember that there was a racial overtone to it
good.
at all.
Good. Well, here in Pittsburgh, it fit this racial thing because there was a high school teacher, high school's downtown, for high school for the performing arts, and he was walking down a alleyway behind the Benedum Theater, and broad daylight. And three, I think, young students, black students, males, were walking the other way. And there was a surveillance camera, so you can, the attack was played on the news over and over. He's walking one way, the teacher, the guys are walking the other way. And as as their paths cross, one guy just, sucker punches him and down he goes, and they just keep walking. And this was, oh my God. And when the guy was questioned, they were apprehended. They said
red-handed as they.
Yeah. So he said, well, they didn't say anything about a knockout game. The guy said, I was having a bad day. He didn't say, no, we're just looking for white people to attack. I was having a bad day. So what's interesting is, in the first story I saw on the weekend, the New York police said this. This case has been blown out of proportion because of the knockout game. We are cautioning that we have not determined whether this is an actual problem or is in fact an urban myth. Now, it's pointed out the St. Louis incident, the Pittsburgh incident was noted, I think, in the New York Times piece. And all of a sudden, everybody's talking about now.
Well, I got to say, the genesis of this is several years old already, and it would start with the part where they would take a picture of it and post it.
Right, that's the thing. They're posting it. They're bragging about it and posting it. But the idea that this is racial is BS.
No, I think it's about youth, not about race.
Exactly. And the thing is,
and poor impulse control that comes with youth.
Right, but the thing is the media. Watch the media now take what have been over the course of about 4 or 5 years, apparently, these anecdotes, these incidents, and create now. And I've heard people talking, like in fear. Did you hear? I mean, it's scary to even go out. There have been attacks in New York, in New Haven, in Washington, in Philadelphia. And it's the kind of thing that media, rather than helping to deal with, the cops keep trying to say, hey, look, guys, we don't think this is some kind of, this is how an urban myth kind of gets created. Or you create a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Right, or you get a bunch of kids that go, hey, look at this new game.
That is correct. If
right,
any
and then
kid
you create
didn't
the
know
problem
about
that
it,
didn't exist.
You absolutely create a problem that did not exist. So, he says
around here it got nipped in the bud pretty quickly when a bunch of kids were on trial for murder.
Yeah. Well, listen, so there have been efforts, and the right-wing media are all over this story because they love nothing better than stories that show black people attacking white people. They love those stories. And every time there's a story like a Trayvon Martin story or the horrific story out of Detroit, anytime it's white on black, the right-wing media always starts saying, oh, here we go again. Do they ever report when it's the other way around. Never.
No, and
never.
where are all the people that thought Trayvon Martin was the most incredible guy in the world now that he's proving over and over again
not
that
Trayvon.
he's a guy that provokes and has provokes fights and has really bad anger management problems and likes to draw his gun.
So you can't hear me when you're talking?
No.
Obviously not. You misspoke. You said Trayvon Martin when you meant
George.
George.
I didn't mean Trayvon Martin. I meant, what's his name?
George Zimmerman.
George.
Mm-hmm. Right. So.
No, I can barely hear you when I'm listening.
Oh. That may just say, oh, dear. So. There are efforts now on the part of some people to try to stop this from getting out of hand. And there was another incident at the Wisconsin State Fair in Milwaukee in 2011 that got really blown up. So that people, were, all those, bratwurst eating, white folks were scared to go to the fair. Listen to this. Witnesses told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that dozens to hundreds of black youths attacked white people as they left the fair. Now, what's funny about that sentence? Witnesses said dozens to hundreds.
Right. Dozens to hundreds. Which is it? 24 or 400?
Yeah. So exactly now, what did we see? Was it, yeah. And you see how maybe it was 7 or 8. Who knows? Not saying something didn't happen, but how this kind of hysteria builds. The game definitely exists and has been around for at least a couple of years. But there is no hard data at all, and this is what the New York cops were trying to say. There is no data at all that this is some kind of a trend, that there's an epidemic, that people should. This is crazy, and it's media, as usual, right-wing media, that is pushing this.
And marauding groups of teenagers with trouble on their mind isn't exactly news either. I mean, we had a part of town, that everybody filled with sidewalk cafes and everything, and for a while, one summer night, there were teenagers that would go, rioting through and with clubs and, send people scurrying. And so, that was fine. There was a curfew, and no one under 15, no one over 15 and under 21 was allowed on the street for 6 months. And that went away, too.
Well, I just
it's kids.
It's kids. And my heart breaks because black young men and older teenagers
just check themselves right into jail.
Exactly
instead of,
right. Why do they? Every time I walk by a group of them on the street, I feel such pain for them. I think, look at you guys. Look at you. I look at them and they're like my son's age, and I think they're beautiful.
Right.
They're this, and I think you poor guys. I know.
We're not going to educate you, and then we're going to punish you, and then we're going to demonize you, and then we're going to be afraid of the person that we created.
Of this mirage that we've created.
Right. Well, it's not a mirage. When you take away the education, you give them no chance of
you do create
fair work and fair wages. Then there's only one path left.
But as someone pointed out on, I think, Salon or Slate, that this is exactly the type of story that the right-wingers love because it goes right after the deepest recesses of the lizard brain. He who is different, that black guy who I've already am frightened of, and now I know that he might punch me. Look, there's one coming this way, and he might punch me. Some school event was called off in the neighborhood where this incident happened in Borough Park Brooklyn because the parents were afraid to let their little girls out because there's more. Total insanity. It's like War of the Worlds. It's like it's mass hysteria based on nothing. But 2 or 3 YouTube videos and fueled by the usual suspects.
Well, let me just suggest a real easy fix that each and every one of us could do. And all that is at that point in your life when you have a little spare time, you join an organization called Oasis, and you go into schools as an older volunteer, and you mentor just one kid. I don't care what color, shape, form, gender, or sexual bias the kid is. Just one kid.
Yeah.
And you will change that kid's life. The kids that are mentored, 90% of them graduate, 90% of them do well. And the kids that don't, well.
Caller?
I'm sorry, I can never call you
at the right time.
The right break in there.
Well, that's
all I wanted to say is about the news media when you're talking about it. This is why I don't even watch too much news anymore. Channel 11 or whatever you watch, like CNN or any of those, they always think they got the pulse of America or a pulse of what's going on in the area, and they only get like a snapshot of it. 60% of the people, they don't know what the hell's going on. They always think they know exactly what's going on in the country or in your local area, which it's so brief, it's unbelievable. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Thank you. No, we are ill-served. And
and we all just watch the news that confirms our own personal beliefs anyway.
Right. But I didn't mean to interrupt what was an excellent suggestion on your part, Susan.
Well, it's something that most, if not all of us, could do, and it would really, really make a difference.
That is true. Oh, I got to tell you, this is sort of comic relief, and you can't see it. Front page of the Post-Gazette. Take a look. There's one of those wonderful stories about a father who's in Afghanistan and surprising his daughter in school. She hadn't been expecting him home for another month, and he'd been gone for like a year or something. And so there's this picture of him in his camo and hugging her. And this is, I guess she was a kindergartner or first grader. So there's all these little kids. And the school really did it up big. So the funny thing is if you look at this picture, and I don't mean, I'm afraid some people are going to get mad at me for this, but I can't help what I notice.
Go for it.
Okay. And I have to, so you got this gorgeous, you have this man, his daughter, they're hugging. She's looking at him with such love, and she's so happy. And then behind them, there's a bunch of little kids seated cross-legged on the floor, and they've been given American flags, and they're waving them. And then behind those kids seated on the floor is a whole bunch of other kids, and they're standing up, and each of them are holding a letter. And the letters, the letters spell "Welcome Home." Now, what is funny? There's got to be at least 25 people in this picture. The daughter and the father obviously happy. There is every face on all of these kids with the flags and look either bored or annoyed, or what the hell are we doing here? It's funny. It's funny if you bother to see their faces. They're totally, they're props is what they are. Sorry, kids, you are props. But remember what it's like.
And if it ain't happening to you,
you don't like it, right? They're thinking, well, how come Autumn gets all this attention? So
anyway, how many weddings did you go to thinking, I remembered I used to love to go to weddings. I thought they were so much fun. And then one day it dawned on me, they aren't fun. They're totally boring. You're just an extra.
That's right. You don't even count.
You don't. No one would care if you were here. You're just,
But what's funny about it is it reminded me of what it is like to be that age. They're first graders. You know, when you're a first grader, and I was trying to remember what I was like and putting myself in that position, you're aware, you are so sort of out of it about what is happening, you know, you do what you're told, right? You sit and you wave your flag or you this and that, and your understanding of the event is on such a strange level and on such a personal level, right? It's always about, well, and it is so clear on these kids' faces. It is funny. I'm sorry. I laughed. I just laughed. I mean, it doesn't mean anything except what it's like to be, a 6-year-old prop in one of your classmates' wonderful moments. It's something.
Even the classmate is probably totally freaked out that they have to do this in public. I always have great mixed feelings about this. You know, it's all staged for our benefit, so we can be moved and we can be happy or we can feel good about it. You know, and what it really is an intensely private moment.
Yeah.
I really shouldn't be on display at all.
Well, yeah, your sense of intensely private moments is so, Susan,
old-fashioned. I know.
Archaic. But I agree with you totally. Okay. Ray thinks we're being, I guess, politically correct. Gentle ladies, he writes. Thank you, Ray. Sorry, but as much as the right are alarmists, we, I guess that's the left, are apologists. There's some truth in that. Yes, Susan, would you agree with that remark?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, then he goes on. I would in no way suggest random acts of violence committed by black youth is a causal relationship, but it certainly is a coincidental one. I would agree that this antisocial behavior, as well as other behaviors, are a result of poverty, illiteracy, and neglect, but we should not use that to deny the reality in front of us. The right use our bias against us. We must tell the truth and start a fix. Well, wait a minute. The truth is...
No, I absolutely agree.
I do too, but the truth is...
I've discussed this for a long time, that we can't even begin to work together to solve problems if it's inappropriate to name them.
Correct.
So that there is so much political correctness in discussing race and the consequences of poverty and class on race in this country that you can't talk about it to get to the conclusion without inciting terrible, terrible fighting.
That's right. Everybody immediately assumes the position, their position.
You know, if you take a position that is not classically liberal when talking about racial issues, but is based on what you see works and doesn't work. For example, busing, which was a marvelous idea at the time, but in fact resulted in killing city school districts and ended up having a whole bunch of people not educated at the price of getting a few people a better education.
Okay, but you're talking about St. Louis because that doesn't make sense what you just said in Pittsburgh because...
And so that's what happened in St. Louis.
Okay.
It happened in a lot of places.
Okay.
And I mean but that wouldn't be
or maybe it did in Pittsburgh.
That wouldn't be the way to actually discuss it, to say, look, this obviously isn't working because there's 40,000 kids that are now getting a worse education.
Well, it's what I would argue the charter schools have done to the public schools.
That is what charter schools do, and it's the same, what starts out as this liberal idea, and it's just used in every wrong way.
Well, it's the law of unintended consequences.
But this is such an obvious consequence.
Yeah.
If you keep leaving children behind, you're leaving children behind.
I just want to say to Ray, what I was pointing out, and that's why I love my sister's story about my brother getting sucker punched in Reykjavik or wherever he was, that was a big blonde Icelandic woman doing the exact same things. I mean, you can't get any different from an American black teenager, male, and a super white Icelandic babe, right? And they both committing the same act. So what I'm arguing about here is this the way it is playing out racially, when in fact there are white kids also doing this, but the right wing grabs this. Any way to make it look like you are right to be terrified of these black people.
Right. And, but Ray's right, too. If anyone that's doing this is behaving in a reckless and lawless manner and are subject to the consequences of the law. To wit, there's a bunch of kids sitting in jail for the rest of their lives here.
To wit. Witless. We got to take a break. Okay? Okay.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Download the CP Haps app to find out what's happening in Pittsburgh. It's the fun and free app that puts the most popular events at your fingertips. Text events to 77948 to download now. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Brought to you by Pittsburgh City Paper.
Go to the all-new bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. Log on now for great deals from Ibiza, Atria's Verde, the Improv Comedy Club, and City Theater. The all-new bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains, bergbargains.com.
Dr. John Watson here. My friend Sherlock Holmes and I would like to invite you to Pict Theatre for The Crucifer of Blood, one of our most thrilling mysteries that features a treasure chest of jewels and a deadly curse. The Charity Randall Theatre in Oakland, December 4th through 21st. Tickets at 412-561-6000 or picttheatre.org. There's no place like Holmes for the holidays.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Okay, just some quick comments. The Stubenville case with now the indictments of the superintendent of the school system there, the principal, 2 coaches. Yes, this is what I was squawking about throughout this thing, that, it's one thing for teenagers whose, brains are not fully developed not to understand what proper behavior is. But these kids, that whole incident was so enabled and abetted by grown-ups around them, and I could not understand why I didn't understand why the guy who, and it's one of these assistant coaches, whose house was where this party where all these underage kids are getting drunk as skunks and the incident happens, why he wasn't the first person indicted. I mean, to me, so anyway, better late than never. Jeez. Hold the adults responsible.
Well, but they were football heroes.
Oh, well, then that's different.
And boys will be boys.
And that's
What's
true,
a little rape between friends, I ask you?
Yeah, indeed. Oh, PJ just looked at the picture I was talking about with all those miserable kids and the happy father and daughter reuniting. He says, "You are so right about the photo. I can't help but go further than just thinking about the children's obvious boredom. When I look at the photo, I can't help but think, yes, that's true." He says, "The indoctrination begins." I'll let you fill in the blank about what awful portion of our culture they're being indoctrinated into. Well, it's clear. I mean, everyone who wears a uniform is a hero, wave the flag. And apparently we aren't seeing half of what went on. The band started playing, every military march known to man. And, all hell broke loose because this one dad came home from Afghanistan. And why do we always overdo it these days?
We do overdo it.
Why doesn't anybody we have no sense left of private moments, and then no one knows when to stop.
Well, not only that, but it's all surface.
You're right.
We are perfectly happy to dab our tears and thank God that our soldier is here, but do we want to fund the VA so that we can pay for the PTSD? Do we want to fund the VA hospitals so they can take care of their wounded warriors? Do we want to? No. Then we start discussing big government. What we really want to do is just sit around and be sentimental.
That's right. That's right, and feel good.
And feel good. Feel good about how empathic we are and all of that sort of stuff.
Right.
You know, it's and do we want to actually do anything good? No.
Nah. Well.
You know, it's the media providing us with our feel-good moment for the day. We are good people.
Well, you're rewarded for doing over-the-top stuff like this because the school had to have had this idea, and then they had to have called the newspaper.
No, I don't know. The school wouldn't know when this guy was coming home. It was probably orchestrated by the media.
No. My understanding from reading the story is the guy did. The father said, contacted the school and said, could I, do you think, because he'd seen stuff like this on television before.
Right.
And he wanted to do that for his daughter. And they did a very elaborate ruse. He practically, jumped out of a box and after reading and the teacher saying, it was a mystery reader. And the teacher saying to his daughter, Autumn, who do you think is the mystery reader? And she doesn't have a clue. She doesn't recognize her dad's voice. And then he pops out, and yeah. So, but they had this whole thing. They worked on it for months. He did say he is quoted somewhere in the article as saying, he seemed to think it went a little, he said, they just, ran with it or something. Yeah, they ran away with it. They went nuts about it. They got on the front page of the paper.
Right.
And all those little kids have their parents can cut out that and they can there'll be a yellowing piece of newsprint where they're in the paper and looking bored out of their little minds. I don't know. I'm sorry, but that photo was not intended to have the reaction that I had to it, but that's just me, I guess.
Well, good for you, because what you didn't have is any, false feelings. You just looked at the picture, and that's it. It really, the manipulation just gets to me after a while.
Yeah. Oh, Ray's back. He says, your use of your brother's experience, I guess he's not going to think that that's a good counter. Your use of your brother's experience is like the Pinto manufacturer arguing that since a VW blew up somewhere in Europe, there should be no recall of Pintos even though they are exploding beyond a statistical average. Wait a minute, Ray. There's nothing but anecdotal information about some kind of trending knockout game. The whole thing is being created. I mean, I'm sure because of social media and the right wing pushing this story, every kid in America is going to know about it. Yes, and then I'll tell you what, and then it will clearly become non-racial. Don't you think? Because kids of all stripes, if it is racial to start with, are going to want to do this thing when they're, in a pack. And I'm not saying it's not a problem. You can't deal with a problem like this except dealing with what underlies everything. And this, as Susan said, these are issues we don't deal with. We just wait until we can incarcerate.
Right.
The most telling thing is our state has pulled funding from the public schools. The Philadelphia public schools are just they're bleeding. They're
not only bleeding, but they're building prisons instead of funding the educational system.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. So at the very time the state says we don't have money for the public education system here in Philly, but about 20 miles outside of Philly, they're building a gazillion-dollar, state-of-the-art, 4,000 inmate prison. So we ain't going to educate those kids. And we aren't going to, consequently, they'll have no opportunities.
No,
But
and it's
then
just
we're
like
just
putting a
going
red
to
bar
encourage-
through the schoolhouse and putting an equal sign and then the picture of the prison.
And you know what? The thing is, it's penny wise and pound foolish. It is so much more expensive to incarcerate than it is to educate. But you know what? Incarceration has become a huge industry.
Oh, no. Do you know we have more people that we warehouse in this country than any other country proportionally? I mean, it's just...
I've been talking about it. I know.
Our exceptional United States, dear Lynn. I'm reading this headline today in our newspaper. Let me see if I can find it. It just said, here it is. Food stamp cuts have broad reach. Experts say affected workers are less productive and hungry children struggle in class.
This is America.
This is 2013, and this is a headline and subheadline in my newspaper.
Hungry children. And our government is cutting the program that provides them a measure of food.
And the people that aren't getting this stuff are workers. They are not sitting home just with their hands out. They are, most of them, working 2 and 3 jobs.
You know, I was talking to a woman yesterday who's 70 plus. She works in any way she can. Her husband is disabled. They are on Social Security, and it's piddling amount of Social Security. That is all they have. I employ her for, like, taking care of my animals when I'm gone and this and that. And she was telling me, I said, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? And she said, well, thank heaven. We now, of course, we do have food stamps. And we went to the food bank, and she was so excited because one of the Steelers, Lamar Woodley, was there. A number of Steelers were there, and they were giving out free turkeys. And she said we were able to get a turkey and some, cranberries and potatoes. And this is a woman who has worked. This is an educated woman. This is, they are working, good, solid, working class people who will never, and she's not in good health. What is going to happen? What are we doing to people?
When we want to talk about what's American and un-American, the fact that exists in our country is un-American. None of us should be able to sit down at our tables and feel very good, knowing that more and more and more and more and more of us are falling into hunger. Let's not talk about poverty. Let's just talk about being hungry. That's not supposed to happen around here. None of us like to think that it's happening. It's happening, and it's happening more and more and more and more and more. And we have a whole group of people in this country that think that's right.
That think these people
and there should be more of it.
That somehow these people bring it on themselves, that they don't have to. And, once knowing her, I don't know anybody who's willing to do anything, work harder. And despite all her physical ailment issues, and it just breaks my heart. So they worked their whole lives. They raised families. They raised a family.
Well, so I'll make my other thing, especially, food banks are in desperate measures these days, folks. So to the extent that you can drop a bag of groceries off
Don't
or
do that.
just
Give
send
them
a
money.
check into
Give them
your
money.
local food bank, there are people that are hungry, and if the government isn't going to do anything, well, then we have to.
I was at the grocery store the other day, and I can't remember who was doing it. I think it was the food bank. And they were handing a list to people as they walked in saying, these are the things we really need. And if you could just pick one or two up and then leave it here with us. And wow, I spent a lot of time in that grocery store getting stuff. My God. Those of us who don't even think about looking at the price of something that we pull off the grocery store's shelf. Like anyone who shops in Whole Foods. I don't know. God. Okay, so something to be thankful for? Yeah, there's plenty to be thankful for. But there's a lot that we are failing to do as a community of people, and it does break my heart. So, well, Susan.
We've depressed ourselves through another hour.
That was not my intent.
Well, mine either. But, if one person teaches a kid to read and another person leaves a can of tuna fish at the grocery store, our work is done.
No. I think it requires more than that.
Okay.
Anyway, if you want to laugh, take a closer look at the front page of the Post-Gazette today. Look at all the other little kids in that picture. And if you can find me one who seems into the event, then I'll eat my Post-Gazette. Okay. Okie doke. Well, I'm looking at snow coming down here, Suze.
All right. Well,
okay.
Good luck. I hope to see you soon.
Yes, I hope so too, and in one piece, as it were.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Safe travels to you as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Toodaloo. Bye. And to you guys, I'm sorry if that got sort of preachy and but what are we gonna do? I mean, what are we gonna do? Anyway, Ray. We really sort of agree, I can assure you, but I don't think, I don't know. Here's what if you see a young black kid walking toward you today on the sidewalk, I want you to hug him.
Oh my gosh.
Jess says, oh my gosh.
I think they hug
It's what I feel like doing all the time. I do. I think, oh, you're so beautiful, and you've got such a harder row to hoe, and I just want to hug them. I do. Hug a black kid today, okay?
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.